In case you missed it, here's Dave and Cheryl's favorite moments of the week. And now it's time for... 1, 2, 3, 4.
It's random.
Is that a fact?
Is that a fact?
4 random facts.
If you had to guess, how much do you think you'd spend on clothes every year?
It depends. I don't know. I think most of the stuff I buy is like workout clothes, I'll be honest.
So maybe a few $100?
$500 to $1,000 maybe if I'm getting some new shoes.
Well, this is a U.S. stat, but the average American spends just shy of $1,000 on clothes annually.
Well, if you think about if you need a new winter coat or new shoes and you're trying to get something quality.
Or a job where you've got to wear suits. Adds up.
Hey, in Portugal, it's actually considered rude to write in red ink.
So when I worked at the casino in London for a bit when I was out of radio, because they were like carbon copies of things you had to sign, I worked in the winner's circle, you had to use a black pen. You could not use blue. And for a while after I left, I'd see something in blue pen and I'd be like, that's wrong. That's wrong. Can't use blue.
It's crazy how conditioned you get to that.
P.T. Barnum and Barnum and Bailey Circus never said there's a sucker born every minute. It's not clear who originally said it, but Barnum wasn't the type to criticize his audience.
No, he was much more about acceptance and trying to entertain people.
And bringing people in.
Exactly. And finally, despite what cartoons have led you to believe, coyotes are actually twice as fast as roadrunners. Coyotes, their top speed is about 43 miles an hour. Roadrunners are only about 20.
And I don't know of any coyote that's ever ordered anything from the Acme Company either. Before random facts.
Today's
1, 2,
4
So random.
random.
Give the public the facts.
4 random facts. And now it's time to put some good in your morning. The good news brought to you by Almar Home Improvements. 519-351-5666.
A great good news story today about what this one company CEO did for his entire employee staff.
Yeah, Ken Griffin, he's the CEO and founder of Citadel down in the U.S., and he's a billionaire, but he reached deep into his own pockets to pay for 10,000 of his staff and their families to go to Walt Disney World in Florida for 3 days.
He's worth a little over $31 billion, according to Forbes' Rich List. That makes him the 40th richest person in the world. A Citadel spokesman revealed that he did foot the entire bill for airfares from New York, Houston, Paris, Zurich, and many other cities.
And he also paid for the hotels for all of them, their park tickets, and even their meals. So I love that he did this.
He even hired some great artists, including Coldplay and Carly Rae Jepsen, along with some famous DJs to go out there and play too.
So the 54-year-old billionaire thanked his staff for, a bumper year of hard work and high returns, really recognizing that their success would not be possible without the hard work of those employees. So talk about a Christmas bonus.
No kidding. They had record returns, and I love seeing that kind of stuff, right? Knowing that the employees are the backbone of the business, let's give them a bone and then some, taking them all the way to Disney. There's today's good news. Of course, Chatham-Kent, we're known for our crows, but what about a raven following you down a highway?
And that's what happened to this couple out in BC, Alex and his girlfriend Jody. They've been working up in northern British Columbia, and were traveling along the Dempster Highway earlier this month when they were escorted by a raven that flew in front of their vehicle down the highway for 45 minutes.
Now, that highway stretches about 740 kilometers from Dawson City in Yukon to Inuvik in the Northwest Territories. It's known as being a bucket list journey for some. It certainly provided them with quite an event for sure. They said toward the end of the video, he stopped the vehicle, went out to feed the raven, and he gave them Temptations cat's treats because their cat was traveling with them because they were headed back home to BC after working up there for a while.
And they said the cat made some odd sounds when the raven was traveling in front and alongside them, but wasn't too fazed by it all. It makes me wonder, is their vehicle black? Like, was the raven attracted to them thinking it was sort of like a leader?
Well, encounters, they say, with ravens often seen as spiritual events, something that, they agree with. They saw it as a sign that their final trip down the highway, after working up north, that it was, that sign that it was kind of closing that chapter of their lives maybe a little bit too.
Okay, interesting.
Isn't that cool? So eventually they said the raven found another raven, and you could see in the rearview mirror they took off together. So
I wonder if he was just looking for company and kind of picked their car as the thing to travel with until it found So another one.
And now they've got it all captured on video. Kind of an amazing moment. Right before Christmas, it was just announced that men can now compete in Olympic artistic swimming for the first time at the 2024 Paris Games.
So approval from the International Olympic Committee means that in the team event, which is 8 athletes, you can have a maximum of 2 men on the team. And adding the men to the sport, which was once just known as synchronized swimming, in case you were wondering, it'll leave rhythmic gymnastics as the last women's only event on the Summer Games program. Now, this isn't something brand new, though. Men have actually been competing in artistic swimming at the Aquatic World Championship since 2015. They had a mixed duet event then, and the gold medal was actually won by a team from the U.S., and now they have this like mixed duet that they do where it's 1 man and 1 woman that compete together.
And it was the Italian team that won that this past year in a 13-nation contest. So things are getting opened up a little bit wider to include everyone in all these various sports. But at the same time, it made me think there was a classic Saturday Night Live skit back, I guess it would have been in the mid to later 80s. It was Martin Short, Harry Shearer, and Christopher Guest was also in it too, where they were trying to become the world's first men's synchronized swimming team.
Officially, it's got, like 0 acceptance,
I don't swim.
Lawrence doesn't swim. So, no, of course not. Nobody is just going to walk up and hand us a gold medal, especially since men's synchro isn't even in the 88 Olympics yet.
But that's okay, because we could use the time. Because I'm not that strong a swimmer.
Now, it's time to put some good in your morning. The good news brought to you by Almar Home Improvements. 519-351-5666.
Well, this woman from Buffalo being called a hero and also an angel, too.
Yeah, a Facebook post and video that was shared on Christmas Day shows Shakira and her boyfriend helping out a man with special needs that they found screaming for help in a snowbank in the middle of the street the day before. So she and her boyfriend brought him in and took care of him because he was suffering from frostbite, and then reached out to his family because there was that massive snowstorm that took down Buffalo and still affecting the city there. I believe actually had a driving ban in place.
He's 64. His name is Joe, and he did suffer those injuries to his hands. He actually had ice connected to his hands because he'd been laying in the snow. Now, I was reading, too, that he works at a theater in the downtown area, and they think that he came out and got panicked by the storm and decided to try and walk home because everything was getting shut down, buses, cabs, and then got confused about where he was in that swirling snow and ended up collapsing into the snowbank.
Yeah, but thankfully, this woman and her boyfriend took him in, took care of him, got him warm. Now, they did reach out, of course, to 911 to try to get like an ambulance there, but it was 2 days before he could be transported because of the storm and the snow. But she even went with him to the hospital, FaceTime his family, let him know that they had him and that they were taking care of him, and the extent of his injuries. I love the one photo. She's like feeding him soup by hand, and then he's like all wrapped up on the couch. They're doing everything that they could to take care of him and nurse him back to health.
Yeah, the man's sister said that she's a walking angel for what she did, and I would hope that any of us would do that in that circumstance, right? You wouldn't just call 911. You would hope somebody would bring the person in. But they've gone above and beyond because now they've created a GoFundMe for this man, too. Yeah,
so one of his coworkers from the theater there has set up a GoFundMe page to try to help cover some of the medical bills. So far, it's raised nearly $75,000, which is far and above the $20,000 that they were hoping for, I think, because so many people have been sharing this amazing story on social media.
I mean, he's going to need more surgeries, right? Because there's going to be damage to his hands. And those medical bills in the U.S. can add up pretty quickly. So pretty amazing story, really showing the spirit of people coming together to help. That's today's good news. A couple of weeks ago, the New England Patriots were in Vegas to play the Raiders. And there was a young man that had an awful experience at that game.
Yeah, this video went viral of a woman in a Raiders jersey literally shouting in the face of a man who was wearing a Tom Brady Patriots jersey at the stadium in Las Vegas. And despite the fact that she is screaming in his ear and right in his face, he just keeps looking forward, doesn't react, and doesn't say anything to her, despite the fact that his Patriots just lost in really heartbreaking fashion. Wasn't it like a last-second fumble thing?
There was that reverse they tried to do and throw the ball around because they would have been going into overtime. I mean, his restraint was remarkable. I mean, clearly she'd had one too many. The guy that she was there with was kind of trying to pull her away a couple of times. She kept going back, jumping in front of him, waving her arms up and down at times so he couldn't even watch the game. Just it was ridiculous.
Taunting him. Well, the man in the video has been identified as Jerry, and he eventually came forward and said, thank you to everyone for supporting him. And he explained that he didn't want the confrontation to ruin the experience at what was his very first NFL game.
But now it won't be his last because the owner of the Patriots, Robert Kraft, called him up and offered him 4 club seats to an upcoming game.
And he was there last Saturday, I believe it was. And he actually got to sit with Robert Kraft, the owner of the Patriots, in his box, got to meet him, shook his hand, and I'm sure the team rolled out the red carpet for him and gave him a whole bunch of free swag.
I know he got a customized jersey. He got a field pass, too, so to watch the team during warm-up. So he got to go right down on the field where all the reporters and things like that are.
And the team said you never know who's watching, but the Patriots just want to thank him for the way that he represented New England and their fan base with class and composure while on the road in Las Vegas.
I mean, I know things can happen in any stadium at any moment because alcohol fuels this, but I will say this. I've been to 3 games in Buffalo. I will never go to another game in Buffalo. And it wasn't all the team that I cheer for, the Denver Broncos. 2 of them were. But one of them, my very first NFL game, was Miami against Buffalo. They call that Squish the Fish. They're in the same division.
Oh, yep.
And so one of my friends had gotten a bunch of tickets. It was a bunch of guys. We all went down. We crashed in one of the guys' houses that lived in the GTA, went across in this big van that one of the guys had rented. And, we were right up at the very top of the stadium, which was actually kind of cool because you go down one flight of stairs and concessions were right there and bathrooms. But about 4 or 5 rows in front of us, there was a Buffalo fan, and he was going at this guy and his daughter, who was there with his daughter, who was maybe 9, and he was chirping Adam the whole game. And I don't know if the dad, at one point, we were kind of watching this, I don't know if he said something to the guy. The guy grabbed him and started punching him in the face over and over. The little girl screaming, "Don't hit my dad, don't hit my dad." I'll say this, security got there pretty quickly. And even some of the Buffalo fans around, I will say this, they tried to pull the guy back, but he was a big dude. He grabbed the security guys. They pulled him off, the Miami fan. He shoved the security guy back, and for a split second, I thought, oh my God, we're going to witness a murder. The security guy almost went over the railing.
Of the upper deck.
Yes. And so they were able to get him. Police got there. They threw him down to the ground. The dad's face was a mess. His mouth, his nose, clearly a broken nose. The little girl is bawling. You've just destroyed her NFL experience. There's no way she'd ever go back.
You just you just gave her one of the most traumatizing experiences of her young life, and it's something she will never forget.
And it's fueled by alcohol. Again, and went to another game one time, and Denver was playing in Buffalo.
Buffalo's notorious for their pregame tailgating.
It was a night game. So people had been drinking all day. In fact, I watched a guy in front of me stumbling. He didn't know where he was, and they were trying to take his ticket from him, but yet they let him in. They cut off alcohol sales in the first quarter because it was so bad. There had been fights all over the stadium in the stands.
And here's the thing, too. I've been to games, and you see fan bases fighting each other in the same fan base. You'll see Bills fans fighting each other.
Oh, it was wild. And I went down with my wife. And both of us were getting taunted mercilessly, snowballs whipped at us as we were going into the parking lot. But it was some of the things people were saying to her. And she's not even a Broncos fan. She's a Green Bay fan, but I bought her a hat because we'd forgot her toque. So I bought her one at one of the little stands that they, sell that merch outside the stadium.
Yep.
And she went to the washroom at one point, and 2 guys confronted her and backed her into a corner and were screaming at her, calling her all sorts of nasty names. Thankfully, 2 other guys that were Broncos fans came along. She said, built like linebackers, and they escorted her back to her seat. And they just said, yeah, you might not want to let her go alone to the bathroom. We went to security and reported it, and they laughed. They said, well, it's a football game. What do you expect? I will never, ever go to another game unless it's in Denver. I will never go to another. I'll watch it on the comfort of my couch. And I'm not alone, because after this guy's story went viral, people started posting their experiences at NFL stadiums. And one guy actually made a great point. They say, talk about soccer, England, hooligans, that kind of thing. They separate fans in the UK.
Yeah.
They each have their own side to try and prevent this sort of thing. And I think that's brilliant.
Yeah.
You should have a fan section for the other
If you
teams.
watched the World Cup, you would have seen that, right? So it was like all the Argentina fans are one side, all the French fans are, and then you kind of have the neutral, like the people just there because it's the World Cup kind of in the middle, but separating them. But it doesn't matter if you're in your home stadium. As a Detroit Lions fan, I've been to numerous games over at Ford Field over the years. And I remember one year we went over, they were playing the Seattle Seahawks. It was like the season opener. And there was a kid sitting a couple of rows in front of us wearing a Seahawks jersey. And it was with like friends and family. They were Lions fans. He's wearing a Seahawks jersey. He was probably like 14, maybe 13. And this guy in the row behind him was just relentlessly screaming in his ear for the entire first quarter until, and I'm pretty sure my brother-in-law said something, and the guy told him, to screw off, like I'll do what I want kind of thing. And I mean, clearly fueled by alcohol. And eventually we saw the kid left in like the first quarter, and we didn't see him come back down to his seat again. And then when I walked up to go to the bathroom, I saw him up there watching the game with a bunch of other Seahawks fans who couldn't sit in their seats because they were just getting relentlessly screamed at.
Yeah.
And I've seen it like Buffalo Bills fans in Detroit at a game before fighting with other people. And it's just like, oh my gosh. Like it's to the point where I'm just going to stay at home and watch the game because it's so... that experience isn't much fun.
Yeah, it isn't. So when we were sitting in the stands at one of the three games we went to, Denver game, and this was going on, we were getting chirped just sitting there, and a couple of people around us that were Broncos fans, they were getting yelled at. There was a couple of Buffalo fans sitting beside me. One of the guys said, "Look," he said, "I've been to stadiums, my buddy and I, all over the place to watch the Bills. This is embarrassing." He said, "If anything goes sideways, we've got your back." It shouldn't have to come to that.
No.
I've got your back in case things go sideways.
I mean, it's one thing if, like, you sit, like, say you sat down next to a Bills fan and they kind of like, oh, Bill, you're a Broncos fan. They kind of like, there's like that playful teasing. That's one thing. It's another thing to like physically assault someone.
I can't even talk about some of the things that were said. I can't repeat it on the radio because
you wouldn't want to repeat them anyway.
Pretty bad. So I don't know. The NFL needs to do something at some point because fan experience is just getting worse over time. Bad as the blizzard was here, and it was bad. It started a week ago today. Things were worse in Buffalo. I was watching some videos of the devastation and how much snow they've gotten, and it's their third major blizzard in just the last few weeks, too.
Yeah, like people in Buffalo are used to these kind of blizzard-type conditions, but even the one that they had last week was more than they were expecting. And it was more than this one couple was expecting. Erica and Davin are their names. Now, Erica was pregnant with their first child. She was due Christmas Day, but around 11 p.m. on December 23rd, her contractions began. And by the morning of Christmas Eve, it had gotten a lot worse, but they couldn't leave their house because of the winter storm and the fact that the snow was piled up and blocking their driveway and even their front door.
So he called 911 and was told they'd attempt to get an emergency vehicle there as soon as possible. When he called again, he was told that they tried, but they couldn't get down his street and they couldn't get into that area at all because of all the storms. So he called a friend who made a post for them on a Facebook group in Buffalo asking for help. Comments then poured in from people offering to, some advice, some help, sharing phone numbers, and an experienced doula was among those that stepped up.
Yeah, her name is Raymonda, and she spoke with the couple around 1 p.m. And, the husband was really worried for his wife and the child because she could hear her in the background, clearly in labor. So she jumped into action, the doula, and started telling him what to do. And eventually they even started video chatting so that she could better assist them through the whole process. And at about 3:30 p.m. on Christmas Eve, their baby was welcomed into the world, weighing in at 6 pounds and 9 ounces. And he added that he wouldn't have been able to do this without the help of this doula, like on FaceTime.
Isn't that something? So the snow, by the way, prevented someone that volunteered to drive and get them off of that Facebook group. Some of that, I'm assuming, had a big truck or whatnot, because there was just so much snow. So they had to trek for about 3 blocks through snow that was knee-deep and hip-deep in some areas with their new baby in order to get picked up. Everybody's in the hospital. Everyone's going to be fine. Pretty amazing.
And they're planning to meet with the doula face-to-face, once the weather improves in Buffalo.
You've been listening to Dave and Cheryl's Favorite Moments of the Week.